Well, let me ask this question. What are your core values or core principles? Honesty? I cannot tell a lie. That wasn't really George Washington, but what about cleanliness? Cleanliness is next to godliness. That's actually attributed to Anglican priest John Wesley. Don't know if it's true or not. Or maybe a fan of the Declaration of Independence, as we should be. Equality. All men are created equal. About unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Or we could just stay within these walls, even St. Paul's. I mean, if you look at our things, if you look on our website, our core values, they pop up. Place of belonging for all people is there. All are welcome at Christ's table. Come as you are. All of those core things to who we are as a community. Now, if you don't really know for sure what your core values might be, you can kind of figure some of them out by asking a couple of questions. When it comes to relationships, what are non-negotiable things for you? I mean, what behaviors or actions do you expect from yourself in response to those non-negotiables? In today's gospel, Jesus actually answers a question. How many times do they ask him and he doesn't ask? Maybe he asks them back, right? He actually answers a question from the religious leaders. They ask Jesus, "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" Now, the law refers to the first 5 books of the Hebrew Scriptures, the Pentateuch. Jesus' answer begins from the book of Deuteronomy, which is, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind." This is the greatest and first commandment. Jesus then moves to Leviticus by adding, "And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. On these 2 commandments hang those 5 books, the law and the books that even come after that. It silenced the Sadducees. They were tied to those first 5. The Pharisees liked them all. So these commandments hang all the law and the prophets. There's nothing controversial here. Every faithful Jew would have had the same answer to the question. They all knew what the first and primary commandment was. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This was a portion of the Shema. It was a prayer that they prayed every morning and every evening. They started their day focusing their heart, soul, and mind on God. They started their day by focusing their connection to God and their love on God. Everything they did was pointed to God and their love for God. Their behaviors were based on this non-negotiable value: loving God. And knowing that their need to refocus that, because we get distracted, they prayed it again at the end of the day. Focused. Though the religious leaders didn't ask a second question, or for the second commandment, Jesus gave it to them. But really, it's not secondary. Jesus says the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. The second is like it. Jesus partnered them together, coupled them together. You can't do one without the other. You can't love God without loving your neighbor, and you can't love your neighbor without first loving God. Having core or primary values is important, and they're just not always easy to live into. In our reading from Leviticus, God says to Moses, "Speak to all the congregation of the people of Israel and say to them, 'You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy.'" God just set the bar high. "You shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy." And not only are you holy, you are to love your neighbor as yourself. Whew. Because you are holy, your neighbor is holy. To love God is to love your neighbor. And to help us out, we're given some examples as to how to love people, how to love our neighbor. It says, "You shall not render an unjust judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great. With justice you shall judge your neighbor. With justice, not unjust. You shall not go around as a slanderer among your people, and you shall not profit by the blood of your neighbor. You shall not hate in your heart anyone of your kin. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people." Now, in this same chapter of Leviticus, God extends to our understanding what neighbor is, because it extends it to the stranger, the aliens, foreigners. God says, "When an alien resides with you in your land, you shall not oppress the alien. The alien who resides with you shall be to you as a citizen among you. You shall love the alien as yourself. For you were aliens in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God." Jesus' answer has expanded our understanding of what it means for us to love the Lord our God with all our heart and with all our soul and with all our mind. Love God first. You are holy because God is holy. Love your neighbor as yourself because you yourself are holy. Love the stranger, the alien, the foreigner. Love them as yourself because you yourself are holy. I believe one of the ways we struggle to live into what God commands, that is what Jesus has reminded us, is the whole rendering unjust judgment piece. I think in modern times we dish out unjust judgment like Halloween candy at trunk or treat, liberally and joyfully. Unjust judgment for you? Here's a little bit of unjust judgment for you, and for you here, have a little bit more. Come back around again, because they're going to do it. We're going to give candy, 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 right? I think that we dish out unjust judgment like that, even when we're not aware of it. I believe we do this when we project our opinions onto others without actually being in a relationship with them. We don't know them, or we don't really know their story. We have not walked in their shoes, but we judge them. We think we know what they need. We think we know what would make their lives better. Now, I want to show you a modern example of what someone or something thinks that they know what will make our lives better and happier. Particularly what will make my life better and happier. We'll see if I can control these slides now. Maybe. All right. That's my favorite trunk or treat picture. Okay? That's me and my daughter Lucy. It was actually taken 12 years ago. And it may have even been our first trunk or treat, maybe even. It was out here on this side of the building. I posted it on Facebook 5 years ago, because I don't even think I was on Facebook 12 years ago, but it was my favorite picture, and it was trunk or treat time, and I was promoting trunk or treat, and I said, look at this fun trunk or treat picture, right? And I put it up there. Now, ever since then, every year at trunk or treat time, right at the end of October, Facebook tells me, here's a memory from 4 years ago, 3 years ago, right? Well, this was 5 years ago, popped up this week, okay? And I love those, okay? It's kind of a judgment. It could have been painful, but it's joyful. For those of you who don't know, my daughter died 2 years ago. If you're new to our congregation, Lucy, a joyful girl, and this picture always brings me joy. I love it. It makes me smile. And, like I said, this year, there it was again. I got to relive that special little moment with that little cookie monster. It's a great way to start my day. However, Facebook does not know me as well as it thinks it does. Google, on the other hand, knows me pretty well. But Facebook does not know me as well as it thinks it does, because later in the day, this popped up. Now, if you can't tell what that is a then and now picture, which I've seen some wonderful then and now pictures. Facebook is suggesting that Lucy and I get together and take a picture now, and I post it in, and it will put up, look, here's the then and now picture of the dad and the daughter. Facebook made a judgment call, and it failed. I would have loved to have that. She'd be 16 now. I would love to have a picture of me in my cowboy hat and her with like a big cookie or something and put that up there together. That would have been joyful. But Facebook made a judgment call. Now, any good homiletics professor would be cringing right now, because there's a fine line between bringing ourselves into a sermon and having a sermon being about us. Right? You preachers who are out there, right? That fine line. And so let me be clear about why I shared the picture. The picture stirs a ton of emotion. It does in me. I wouldn't be able to actually show this if I hadn't spent a day crying about it already. But I've already processed that. I'm good. We're careful about what we show, right? And so this really is not about me. I've shown these pictures because I actually want to get a reaction out of you. Right? Some sadness, some anger at Facebook. I was mad at Facebook. Grief does funny things, right? What I really want, reason I'm showing this to you, is because I want emotional reactions when we experience unjust judgments in the world. Why is it that we only make change or make reactions when it hits close to home? Right? It's the only time that we do that. When it's not in line with our core values, it's us that are doing the unjust projection even, right? Not just we see it, but we also do it. I want us to have some kind of emotional response when we see unjust judgments in the world. Okay? Most of them aren't about Facebook. It's about us trying to believe what someone else needs or wants. And it usually comes out with, why aren't they ... Why do they ... I wish they would, because I know what's best for them. And really what we're saying, it's not that I know what's best for them. I want them to do that so I'll be less uncomfortable with what they've done. Right? Unjust judgments come in all kinds of ways. Can we begin to see them and have a reaction in a way that brings about change? Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. Love God first. You are holy because God is holy. Love your neighbor as yourself because you yourself are holy. Love the stranger, the alien, the foreigner. Love them as yourself because you yourself are holy. Now I want to leave you with one more slide. It's a quote by Hillel the Elder. Okay? Hillel the Elder is one of the most influential rabbis in Jewish history. At least that's reported that. He was the head of a school, the House of Hillel, that eventually became the primary academy of Torah study prior to the destruction of the Second Temple. So he died right around, they think around year 10. Okay? So Jesus was among us, driving his parents crazy, probably about right then. But to this day, his teachings and lessons are integral still to the Jewish perspective and practice. You can't read it. I've got a better slide. And no, that's not him because, pictures weren't that good back then. What it says is, what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. That is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. What is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. Think about all the things that might be hateful to you, that we might do or project